this job. And Dennis was here, and it was kind of a reunion for us, and always was good friends of Dennis. And I think the one thing that I took from him was he always wanted to do what was right. And he had I think a calling to come back and do some public service. And I just think that when I reflect back on that and his wanting to do what was right for people, it's something that we can all take away from and maybe expound in our own lives somewhat that way. And so it's a sad note. Sympathy goes out to his family. And so with that,
I'd just like yeah, I would just like to add as well that I've known Dennis for a lot of years and as well, and I think he was a dedicated public servant and family man, and I don't think the guy missed a second at all of the Board of Supervisors. Very committed to his position and will be missed. I've thought about this as well, and I think probably the blessing to this is that he didn't suffer very long. So that was the good thing, that I had a grandfather that was 4.5 years in a nursing home with a massive stroke paralyzed on one side. So I know Dennis, my grandpa didn't want to live that way, and I know Dennis would never have wanted to live that way as well.
thank you. With that, we'll go on to item 3. Public comments. Make some public comments now. Yes, could you state your name?
Charlotte Neal. I have brought a petition that we will take up to the auditor's office so that they can, it can formally be presented, but my name is Charlotte Neals, and I am a lifelong resident of Floyd County, and I appreciate this morning's opportunity to address the board. I am presenting a petition signed by over 200 Floyd County residents, which requests the board to revise and approve amendments to Floyd County's wind turbine ordinance that allows compromise, avoids a further extension of the wind turbine moratorium, and is a wise choice for the economic future of Floyd County and its residents. The signers of this petition are excited about the possible large increase in taxable valuation wind turbine projects would provide to the taxing bodies of Floyd County. There are projections that over time, an additional generation of $70 million in tax collections with an additional $100 million in lease payments to landowners, plus the creation of 300 jobs, will result from one such project. Most of our taxing bodies, as you know, are struggling to maintain their existing services because of slow-growing taxable valuations and ever-increasing costs. In some instances, state aid is being reduced or withdrawn, and the citizens of Floyd County are struggling to afford the ever-increasing taxes they're paying now. The increased tax monies from these projects could go a long way toward at least partially solving a shortage of funds and hopefully bring some property tax relief to our citizens. Lastly, I must mention that by approving a revised ordinance as we are asking, the supervisors could avoid a costly litigation that our county is destined to lose. That is the opinion of our county attorney, Todd Pritchard, whom we employ for expert legal advice and whose opinion we should value and follow. Litigation in Worth County that did not favor a similarly restrictive county wind ordinance only reinforces the validity of his opinion. Thank you for your time, and I hope you will consider the voices of these citizens when making decisions regarding this issue.
And you have a petition?
I do. It's right here. We're going to present it up to the auditor's office so they can make copies and.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? Scott?
Scott Larson, Floyd County. Just want to turn today to speak to Board of Supervisors and also people of Floyd County. I've tried in the past few days to reflect and gather my thoughts about the service and the role Dennis Cooper has made this time he served as supervisor for this county. I met and got to know Dennis 2 years ago. When I think about the conversations that I had with Dennis and that we had together, Dennis often talked about the oath that he took to serve, protect, and especially the safety concerns of the citizens in all the areas of this county. Talked about wanting to find ways to benefit, be fair to all who live here. The last thought that stays with me about Dennis, several times he said, "I'm not a politician, I just care." He's a great man. That's all I say. Thank you.
Any other comments? Like to make? Not. We'll move on to item 4, review the action and regarding the approval of the June 2nd, 2045 minutes.
I read the minutes and I would recommend the approval.
Yeah, I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Item 5, review action regarding approval of the claims.
I've reviewed the claims. I didn't find anything. John, could you mute your phone, please? I reviewed the claims and there's some departments that are getting close. And so to make sure they're watching their budgets for the end of the year here. And otherwise, I thought all the claims.
Yeah, I so too, but claims. Didn't find anything out they were very. So that was the motion on your part, and I'll second that motion that we approve the claims. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Number 6, the updates regarding various boards, commissions, and activities since the last meeting.
So. Start with that. I had some notes here.
Well, while you're finding those, I can say that I didn't have anything, I was out of the country. So,
Welcome back.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, welcome back. Well, this morning, over the weekend, I received an email from Mark Wicks with the Chamber of Commerce. And Dennis served as a liaison for that board. And, he had sent me an email asking if I could attend that meeting and let him know what's going on. The liaison has the school, city and county each have a liaison representative to talk about what's going on. And so Dennis was our topic this morning, on my part and with the auditor, treasurer, recorder's process for appointing, if that's what they chose to do with their meeting today. So lots of activities going on with the chamber. I do have a flyer that they are bringing back the duck race. Going to be on July 5th. So if, and then they gave us tickets to sell. So if anybody's interested in duck race tickets, I want tickets. I had sorry, my up here. I didn't save my notes or what, but I had a meeting with let's see, but Oregon, I had a meeting here since June 2nd. At this point, I can't remember what it is. I apologize. My notes aren't coming up here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I got it. All right. It was regarding the transition of mental health claims and how the county will process those with county social services being done June 30th. There's some of that related to billing through, that comes through the clerk court's office, that type of thing. We had that. And then also, I just wanted to mention, I forwarded an email yesterday that, early this morning, I think it was, regarding the Chamber of Commerce and the Area Development Corp are hosting or sponsoring. Iowa State University Extension and Outreach is doing a program on wind energy. It is a neutral, they are neutral, they don't take a position one way or the other. It's just information that they have on their research of wind energy. That is going to be a week from Thursday. And if you didn't get from it, I sent it to several of you in this room. It's intended for community leaders, but it is open to the public. And so if you didn't get that email, let me know and I can forward that on to you. But
That's also fair.
no, this is, they got this at the NIAC Center. Yeah, yeah. It's during the day, so, and the intent of that, I guess, was because it is a community leaders that things, and so they didn't expect as much of a crowd like there might be if it were, you know, meetings like have been held in the past to draw public. And I think it's 1 o'clock or 1:30. 1 o'clock, thank you, Mary. Oh, sorry, at the library, not at night, at the library. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks. And I think that is
And that's what.
1 o'clock.
One thought is
Yeah.
what, I
Yeah,
assume those.
you should have it in an email as
Yeah,
well.
I've.
Yeah.
I got it, we both screwed up place,
Yeah,
like.
I know, we're not going very well here, we did it. And then Floyd County was one of the volunteer groups for the mobile food pantry on June 4th, and I did help out with that as well. It was the largest turnout that they have ever had, but part of that is attributed to the governor has, for the months of June, July, and August, has food available for families with children aged 4 to 18. And so they had separate food that families could apply for. And they did run out of that food and ran out of a lot of the other food as well. I think the numbers were something like 353, highest numbers they've had at the mobile food pantry out at the fairgrounds. Quite a slick process, runs fairly smoothly. And I know Mark Ellis, you were out there volunteering as well, and we had a good turnout for Floyd County employees as well out there. That sounded like Adam Miller brought his entire family and then helped with the pantry and Amy, Jesse, that's several people that were out there helping.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That, we'll move on to, number 7, the review of Floyd County audit report for the year ending June 30th by Garnet and Company.
Good morning. Do you have your books?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, got it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just go through and hit the highlights. You guys had a lot going on for this fiscal year, so we have a lot to talk about, but we'll hit the highlights, and then if you have, specific questions, we can go ahead and address those. So I'll just go ahead and page it through the book. We'll start on page 2, which is on Gardner and Company letterhead. And this is the independent auditor's report for Floyd County for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. Now, the purpose of an audit is to opine on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented. The audit has nothing to do with finding fraud, finding errors, finding irregularities, that type of thing. The audit is designed to provide an opinion on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented. We do risk assessments and then build our audit based on those risk assessments. And the audit is based on tests and samples. We don't look at every single transaction that goes through the county during the fiscal year. And then we issue our opinion based on the results of those tests. So first paragraph, the opinion on the financial statements. For the fiscal year ended June 30, 2024, we have issued an unmodified opinion, which is what you want to hear. It means we believe that the financial statements are fairly presented. Now, during the course of the audit, we did find some things that needed to be adjusted. Some of them were material and dollar amount, and we'll talk about that when we get to the findings in the back. But those adjustments were made by the county so that all the transactions were properly included in the financial statements. So the remainder of this independent auditor's report just goes ahead and talks about the basis of the opinion. How we assess the risk, how we design the test work, what the responsibility is for the county of the financial statements, because ultimately, even though we help you with the preparation of the financial statements, you know, it is Floyd County's financial statements, so the county has to take responsibility. On page 3, it talks about-
Elizabeth, could I just ask maybe that you come up to the table here so that people on the phone and the microphone for that is right there and I can come across better on the remote people. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so page 3, auditor's responsibilities, goes ahead and talks about what our responsibilities are. We exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism through the audit. Again, we assess the risk of material misstatement. We obtain an understanding of your internal control. We evaluate the appropriateness of your accounting policies and procedures. And then we also do some work at the end to look at your fund balances, and we have conversations to determine that there aren't any, glaring things that would, have you not be able to continue as going concern. So we do take on that responsibility as well. Included in this audit report are the required supplementary information and supplementary information. So we talked about that. This year, Floyd County did have to have a single audit because you spent over $750,000 in federal money. And we'll get to that again as we get closer to the end of this annual report book. Management's discussion and analysis then starts on page 6. And this is the county's opportunity to show off the highlights. It talks about the different components that are included in this annual report. The county does have 3 sets of financial statements. You budget on the cash basis, so we have a cash to budget comparison. You're required to submit a GAAP report to the Department of Management, which is on a modified accrual basis. That does not include capital assets or long-term liabilities. It's just that 60-day accrual period for accounts receivable and accounts payable. So we have that set of financial statements. And then also there is a full accrual financial statements that does include capital assets and long-term liabilities. So these paragraphs just go ahead and talk about that, what all's included. Also included in the management's discussion and analysis are some comparative information. We have a comparative balance sheet and statement of changes comparing fiscal 24 to fiscal 23. It also gives the opportunity for the county to talk about the changes in the budget. What did you have for budget amendments in 2024? Why did you have to amend as you went through the year? It also, on page 13, gives the county a chance to talk about the economic factors in next year's budgets and rates. So there's information as we're looking ahead to fiscal 25, which you're currently in. So then the actual financial statements then start on page 14. And exhibit A and exhibit B are going to be your full accrual financial statements. So you're going to see all your capital assets, you're going to see your long-term liabilities on that statement of net position. So this is most like what you would see in the private sector with their, the normal balance sheet and income statement. So on page 16, with the statement of activities, that is your income statement. So for this year, Floyd County did see a positive change in net position of $3.6 million. And of that, there was about $1.5 million that went through your farm to market fund down at the DOT, where they are going ahead and improving your infrastructure and doing those road projects. And then Floyd County is going ahead and taking over that infrastructure. So there was $1.5 million worth of infrastructure or infrastructure in progress that had been included. Floyd County also continues to spend your American Rescue Plan Act dollars. A little over $1 million was spent during this fiscal year, which again played into the county having to have a single audit for this fiscal year. On page 17 and 18, we start exhibit C. Exhibit C and Exhibit E are your modified accrual financial statements, and this mirrors what was submitted to the Department of Management for your GAAP report. So we present the general fund, rural services, secondary roads, debt service, the LEC courthouse debt service, and the capital project funds are major funds. There's a calculation that is prescribed by GASB 34 that helps us determine which funds are to be presented as major. And then the remainder of the county's governmental funds are aggregated and presented in that non-major column. And the detail for those smaller funds is in the back of the book in Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. So that way you can still see the detail for those smaller governmental funds. But again, you know, this mirrors what is on the GAAP report, modified accrual basis, 60-day accrual period. Exhibit D and Exhibit F then are the reconciliations that step you through exactly how you get from the modified accrual to the full accrual. So you can see that transition process and it's documented in this report. Then we get to Exhibit G, H, and I, and this is your internal service health insurance fund. So we present a statement of net position, statement of changes, and also a statement of cash flows for that. Health insurance continues to be a very tricky thing to budget for, plan for. You never know what the premiums are gonna do. You don't know what you're gonna have for claims. So, you know, anytime we see a positive increase in that balance, it's a win. So, and you did have that for this fiscal year. Exhibit J and Exhibit K then are your custodial funds. So there's several funds that the county holds in a fiduciary capacity. You know, your assessor, your 911, emergency management, also your schools and your cities and your townships where you're collecting those tax dollars and then remitting them to those entities. So Exhibit J is a snapshot of the balance sheet of where those sat at June 30th. And Exhibit K is the activity that happened during the fiscal year. Now, the detail for those is presented in the back in Schedules 3 and 4. So that way, you know, this is all just aggregated. You can see the detail in the back. Page 31 then starts the notes for the financial statements, and I'm going to skip through all of them unless somebody has a specific question. This just goes ahead and gives a lot of accounting definitions and vocabulary. It also gives a lot of information on presenting on the cash basis, presenting on the modified accrual basis, presenting on the full accrual basis. That explains that. There's several pages of actuary information. You contract with an actuary every year to calculate the IFRS or the OPEB valuation. That's every 2 years with Bob Hobson. So he provides several pages of information. Also IFRS calculates their liability every year, and then they divide that out between all the participating entities. And that actuary also provides about 4 or 5 pages of information to be included on how they came up with those numbers. The notes also include information about your insurance. About your debt, goes ahead and provides the amortization schedules. So again, just a lot of good supporting documentation and information for what's in the financial statements. So the next place I want to stop then is on page 58. And this is the budgetary comparison schedule. So this is the cash basis. It's the cash from the governmental funds that came in and went out. The first column is actual, which includes all your governmental funds. There's a column titled less funds not required to be budgeted, and this is your drainage, because drainage is not part of your budget process. So we go ahead and we pull that out of there to get to the net. So this is your budgeted funds. And then we also present the original budget and then the final amended budget. And then we present the final to net variance so that you can see, you know, how close you were to your budgeted amounts during this fiscal year. There are some significant variances when you're looking at this. But again, discussed with all the department heads, and with Morgan and Jesse. And even though some of these numbers are larger variances, it was explained, you know, especially with capital projects, they never progress the way you think it was going to. You know, intergovernmental revenue, you might think you're gonna get a grant, but it might not come in when you think it's going to. So, even though some of those revenues were significant, again, they were explained, so they didn't raise any red flags during that audit process. So. Following that, we have some additional required supplementary information about the budget. Again, more explanations about what had gone on during the year. There's some more required supplementary information about your IFRS. We're required to present 10 years of information for your proportionate share of the net pension liability. We're required to present 10 years of your contributions to IFRS. And then we go ahead and talk about that on page 66, more actual information that's required to be presented. Same with the OPEB on page 67 and 68. Again, this is a 7-year schedule. We've had this standard implemented for 7 years now. This will ultimately be a 10-year schedule. We'll add to it as we go. So then if you go to page 70 and 71, this is your non-major governmental funds. So those funds that are aggregated and presented as non-major in the front of the book, this is their chance to have their individual representation. So again, schedules 1 and schedules 2 do that for your non-major governmental funds. Schedule 3 and 4 for the custodial funds. So they support those amounts in the front of the book. And then on page 67 and or 68, 69, we have the statement of changes in custodial funds also. So then I want to stop at page 80. And now page 80 is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. As I mentioned earlier, Floyd County was required to have a single audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2024, which means you spent over $750,000. So this schedule goes ahead and displays what programs you were spending the federal dollars through. And it goes ahead and it details everything out. There's the basis of presentation that we have to go ahead and show, summary of significant accounting policies and procedures. So again, you were at $2.4 million worth of federal funding that, was spent through Floyd County for this fiscal year, which triggers a single audit, which triggers more audit procedures. Morgan is going to get to have a really good time here later when she submits to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. It was a lot easier a few years ago. The Federal Audit Clearinghouse has gone through an overhaul. And it's not necessarily a good one, something that usually took about an hour, because I think you've done them. But now it's pretty lengthy, and cumbersome, so we'll have to do that, reporting to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse later today.
Yeah.
Get that wrapped up, so that brings us to more Gardner and Company letterhead then on page 82, and this is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. And in addition to opining on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented, we do some internal control work. We're looking for segregation of duties. We also do some Code of Iowa compliance test work. And the state auditor's office is our oversight, and they provide the guidance every year on what they want us to look at. Now, there's some things we look at every year, especially with the budget and board minutes and that types of thing. There's some things we look at every other year, some things it's every 3 years, some things it's every 5 years, and sometimes the state auditor's office throws things in just for fun. So again, this is based on tests and samples. The findings are based on our test work. So if there's something that you have to do 12 times a year and you do it right 11 times and you mess it up once, and if I pick that one for our test work, it triggers a finding. So that gives you a little background on, how that process works. So this goes ahead then and will lead us into the findings. We also have a letter about the compliance on the major program that is required by uniform guidance. And this is the single audit letter. So this talks about the compliance test work that we have to do for the single audit. And the compliance matrix for the single audit is about 2,000 pages of reading. So if you ever want to check that out, and that's just part 2 of it. And then there's part 3 and part 4 that are program specific. So we all have to be familiar with that, but this kind of outlines, where that's all coming from. So same thing, based on tests and samples, we don't look at every single transaction that might have had an impact on the finding. So then that leads us into the schedule of findings and question process starts on page 87. And this talks about the highlights. There's unmodified opinion on the financial statements. We did have some internal control issues over financial reporting as a result of the test work, which we'll get to those. There was not any non-compliance with material to the financial statements. We did have a material weakness in internal control applicable to the major program, which segregation of duties. So, you're not going to get away from that. We did have 2 major programs this year. $750,000 is the threshold to distinguish between a type A and a type B, so a big program and a small program. And you've actually had 2 programs that were over that $750,000 mark. And because you have not had a single audit in the most recent fiscal years, both of them were a non-low risk situation. So we were required to test both of those programs as major and report on both of those. So we did the American Rescue Plan funding, and then there was also a highway planning construction project that were both tested for compliance. So then on page 88, we get into the meat of the findings and question costs. First one is segregation of duties. It's an old friend. It's in every single audit report that we issue. Just because of the way that the government is structured, you don't have enough people in each office to completely segregate the record keeping and the custody of the cash. So it's entirely possible that one person would handle a transaction from inception to completion. So again, we provide an internal control questionnaire every year. We provide suggestions for improvement, if we can see where, there's duties that aren't compatible. Anytime that there's a state auditor's report on, misappropriation or anything, I encourage you to read it. The state auditor's office is really good about explaining exactly how things happened and where the segregation of duties fell. So I always encourage all of my clients to keep up with those reports. Read them, because again, they're very detailed, and see if, is that something that could happen here? And then make the necessary adjustments, so you kind of are staying in front of some of those risks, so. The second finding then is in regards to financial reporting. It starts on page 88 and goes to 89. During the course of the audit fieldwork, we've had material amounts of accounts receivable, accounts payable, deferred inflows of resources, and capital assets in construction in progress that hadn't been properly recorded in the county's financial statements. So we did propose adjustments to go ahead and correct that to properly include those transactions, which were made by the county. So those were all properly included in the financial statements that you see. With the accounts receivable, it's really important for the departments to make sure that they're the receipts they're receiving in July and August, they really need to be careful about marking whether or not that should be an accrual or not. The treasurer's office is not involved with the day-to-day office work for the rest of the offices and departments. And so they're relying on those offices and departments to tell them if it's for goods and services received in June or if it's a current year thing. So, coming up, you're almost to that accrual period, and it's really important that they have good communication so that everything's getting reported as should. Also with this, the opioid settlements were finalized for several of the other, Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, and a couple others went ahead and finalized those settlements during fiscal 24. And so, that's gonna be collected over the next 17 years. So we have a spreadsheet that's in place. Morgan has that now, so you're gonna be able to track those payments as they come in. But the tricky part is that the spreadsheets that the state auditor's office has provided to track those payments don't necessarily line up with what you're actually receiving. So it's a good starting point, I guess, and then you can make adjustments as you go along. But, being able to track that will help resolve this audit finding, because you'll know where you're at the end of the year and how much more you expect to collect and where you're at with that process, so. The next finding we have then is preparation of full disclosure financial statements. Floyd County does not have a CPA on staff that is able to do the gap report and the full accrual financial statements, along with writing all of these note disclosures. So because we assist with that process, I'm required to put this finding in. Also, it's in 98% of our audit reports that we issue, because it's very common not to have that person on staff. On page 90, we had a finding about a conservation receipt, and there was a state of Iowa check that had been made payable to Floyd County Conservation Board. And it had not been deposited with the county treasurer. It wasn't recorded by the county. Instead, it was signed over to a vendor to pay a bill. And that means that receipt didn't come through the county. It wasn't recorded as revenue. That expenditure didn't go through the budget. So, in the future, that needs to all go through the county. Anything that is made out to Floyd County Conservation Board needs to go through and be deposited with the treasurer and go through the proper procedures. If there is a vendor claim, they need to file the claim. It needs to go through the claims process, be approved. Conservation Board looks at those, they go through, here as well. So just making sure that those internal control policies and procedures are being followed. On page 91, we have a finding about the debt issuance and an interest payment. You issued debt during the course of fiscal 24, and the debt documentation specifically said that the county was to deposit a certain amount of the proceeds directly into the debt service fund to be used to pay the interest payment that was due in June of 2024. And instead, the county deposited the funds into the capital projects fund and paid that interest payment from the capital projects fund, which, was not in compliance with what the debt obligation said. And also the other problem with that is like when you look at your budget document and your cash and your gap report document, you are not supposed to be able to pay a debt service payment out of capital projects. It should all have to be coded to capital projects, and same with debt service. The debt services fund is structured so that you can only have debt service funds and payments for principal and interest coming out of there. So, just make sure the next time you issue debt that, you're reading that closing statement and those instructions on, what needs to happen with those.
That'll be a long time. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't. And then on page 92, we also have a finding about the tax district reconciliations. And every year the county treasurer should be performing a tax district reconciliation where you're looking at your abstract, what you think you're gonna collect, and then you look at, what you actually collected, and you should be able to reconcile that. And those reconciliations weren't happening. So now the treasurer's office is aware of that they need to be doing this. So this one should hopefully be resolved in the future. So it should be okay moving forward. On page 93, then at the top, we talk about the schedule of findings and question costs for the federal awards. Because you had a segregation of duties finding for the financial statements, that also triggers one for the single audit. And then, again, you just don't have enough people to properly segregate. And for the road project, you've got one person that is filling out all those forms. You've got one person that's, looking at all that for the most part. The mitigating factor there is all those claims go through the supervisors, so you're able to look at all of that. You're ultimately the ones that are awarding the contracts when they're bidding that project. So, you do have some things in place to mitigate the risk, but again, because we have a segregation of duties finding for the financial statements, it falls over into that one as well. The next findings that we have then are in regards to the required statutory reporting. This is the Code of Iowa compliance test work. The budget was okay this year. There wasn't anything that had exceeded what had been budgeted or appropriated. The questionable expenditures comment. During the course of our test work, we did not identify any expenditures that we believe don't have proper public purpose. Now, again, I want to stress this. It's based on tests and samples. We don't look at every single transaction. So the transactions that we selected for testing had appropriate public purpose. But again, it's very important that the supervisors are involved in that claims process. And, the auditor's office is thinking about flagging stuff that they think might not be appropriate or that they want to bring to your attention. And so, like I said, for our test work, we did not identify any questionable expenditures. The Code of Iowa identifies $6,000 as the potential threshold for the potential conflict of interest with a related party transaction. So we have several business transactions listed here that go ahead and show those related party transactions that happened during the year. We did have one that was over the $6,000 threshold, but she does not participate in the acquisition of the services. And so that is also allowed by the code because she's not involved in that. So the rest of them under that $6,000 threshold. So we were okay with that. So then we need to flip back then to page 95. We have a code of ordinances finding. This has been in the report for several years. So, I hope we're getting closer to getting this resolved. The Board of Supervisors is required to compile a code of ordinances for all the county ordinances in effect every 5 years. And I know the recorder's office had taken on this responsibility, so, and I know was working towards it when we were here to do the audit. I did visit with her about it and making progress, just not there yet. So I'm hoping that this will get resolved soon, because like I said, it's been an audit report for several years, so hopefully that one will get resolved. Also, we had a finding about public hearings. The county entered into an installment purchase agreement for election equipment, but a public hearing was not held prior to that. Entering into an installment agreement is debt, and so therefore you have to follow the Code of Iowa requirements and jump through all the hoops to have the public hearing and approval of that debt. So we have a transfer comment also. Transfers are required to be approved by a resolution. The code dictates that as well. And we did select one transfer for testing that hadn't been approved by a resolution. So just making sure that all that formal verbiage is in.
What was that? What was that? That wasn't approved by us?
It was the resolution, it was a June 17th, 2024 transfer from the general fund to the conservation reserve fund was not approved by a resolution. So So just make sure that every transfer is done right. So it's- And then the last statutory finding we had, and review
Yeah, that is. Oh, wait, conservation didn't have one. I think we've done that by motion in the past, but.
all of them should be done by resolution.
Yeah. I think we've never done conservation by resolution.
Yeah.
It's been a motion.
And that's
It's, would that be the same with the money that we, give to emergency management?
if it's a transfer, if it's an operating transfer, like rural services, secondary roads. Now, emergency management is a custodial fund, so, is that the county writing the emergency management a check?
Yes.
That's not a transfer.
Okay,
That's a
that's the same
contribution.
process we've done for years. with
Yeah.
Conservation.
Yeah, but see, conservation is all county. The emergency management is different because it's a custodial fund. And so, supervisors are not, over that. You're just in a fiduciary capacity. So when you're doing your, contribution from the county to the emergency management, it's not a transfer, it's just a contribution.
And we didn't have anything for conservation this year, no transfer to conservation reserve this year, so let's remember next year, make sure.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then the last finding that we had then is with the annual report, and the gap report was not filed with the Department of Management prior to December 1st, as required by the code, so we have a finding about that as well. So that gets us through the audit report. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? It's a lot of information, so.
How many counties do you audit?
For fiscal 24, we audited 11, and then I consult with 5 or 6 others that call me for consultation.
How many cities do you do?
3 right now. Yep. And then we've got 2 2080 agreements that we're doing audit for.
You said, are you doing landfills?
Yep.
So how would you say we rate in your 11?
Everybody's different, so that's a hard question because everybody has their own projects, You've had the ongoing law enforcement project with that and the courthouse remodel and now the tower project, so, and it sounds like secondary roads is really ramping up with bridge projects and grants
To be
and.
more federal.
Exactly. So, your fund balances are doing well, so, like I said, it's hard to compare county to county because. Everybody's different and everybody has different departments. Not everybody has public health. Not everybody has, a real active conservation. It just,
No clue.
it's difficult to compare them, so,
And then she audits Sarah Border County, who has a CPA
yeah.
and, gets awards for their.
Yeah.
audit report.
Yeah, they do an annual comprehensive financial report, Sarah Bordeaux does, and we submit it to the Government Finance Officers Association, and we apply for award of excellence every year. And they go ahead and they judge our work, and yeah, we're like 25, 26 years running that we've had that.
And so we should have your service, we do every year.
It's every year.
We do this every
Yeah.
year.
Every 3 years we go out with bids.
Yes. Yeah, the Code of Iowa requires that counties have an audit every year.
Every year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's ever on the phone, could you mute your phone, please?
Well, that's a lot of
It's a lot of
a
information.
lot of information for. I had a couple questions.
And we just hit the highlights. I could talk about it for a long time.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
understanding.
That's
Do a good job.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you do have questions or concerns throughout the year, Gloria knows you can,
You can call.
yeah, and Morgan has been reaching out too, so we're trying to get her started off on the right foot, so.
Did you get my email about that?
Yeah, and I responded
Okay,
yesterday.
I made
It should be in the box.
Okay,
Yeah, because Des Moines packages and ships all that out, so
okay, so you get that, because that has early childhood on there.
it does. It's all broken out separate so that you can see all that. Okay,
Okay, well, we'll review this and
yeah,
read it and.
well, and like I said, let me know if you have questions or concerns, so. We'll go through it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
You want me, you're just gonna call me when you're ready? Is that okay? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I just, it's sweet, yeah.
All right. So, number 8, the county insurance proposal body, Melrose Insurance and First Main Street Insurance System and Associates review an action regarding the county insurance coverage effective July 1st. And if no further information is needed.
That was a lot of information to review.
Pardon?
That was a lot of information to review.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah,
yeah. Um,
okay.
do we want to, have, maybe some comment, last minute comment by some?
I think they're all here to present. We got systems on the top of the pile. Should we just go ahead and have you guys start what you've got? We have Joe and John and
And
Lauren's joining us today as well.
Okay.
Our team, so.
it's so, you all did bids with ICAP and then with IMWCA
Yeah.
for work comp. And, and that's one of the things I was trying to question when looking at the dollars of it all
Sure.
on, where we're at with the dollars.
You bet. Is it okay if I just quick overview of presentation or what?
if you come up here, I think that'd be better.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, just starting point, appreciate the opportunity to present today. Just a few opening comments and then I'll get into, this is a, 50 some odd page document, so we will focus on a couple of pages. I tried to mark that in the ones that we dropped off, really the bulk of the information is in a few pages.
So if you did the, the highlights,
Sure.
and I mean, after reading this all weekend,
Yeah, a lot. I'll give a very high level overview. Just a couple of quick opening comments. First of all, just condolences to you all. I've had a chance to work with Dennis very briefly in just a few conversations that seemed like an extraordinary guy. I know John knew him very well personally, so condolences there just as a starting point. Second comment is, I want to say credit to Mark. These bid situations can be contentious and difficult. I want to say, sorry, I'll get. I do want to say, credit to Mark and his office. Again, these can be contentious. We have to gather information throughout to put together bids, and their office has been very good about requested information, giving it to us proactively, information that we need, providing it. So I just want to say thank you for a professional and cordial bid situation. That was very nice to work through. And then credit to Morgan and office just with all the requested information and loss control visits. And this process can be a lot. So thanks to you and your team for that piece there. If you open up your packet, just as a starting point on page 3 here, there's a letter from John and I. And the only thing that I want to make sure that we cover in this is the insurers that we're presenting. ICAP is the Iowa Communities Assurance Pool. They are a risk pooling organization based out of Iowa. They serve 75 of the 99 counties. So risk pooling from an insurance standpoint for public entities is very common in the public entity space. So ICAP 75 of the 99 counties are currently insured with ICAP. And then IMWCA, we estimate right around 70. So they are organizations that are very familiar with public entities in the state of Iowa.
So they are ensuring their, the general liability and everything on that many counties, or is it there, some counties have some once-off groups that are insured with ICAP, is it?
So they
Okay.
insured 75 of the 99 are members of ICAP, meaning they carry at least a line of coverage with it.
Some line income, not necessarily what we're doing here today, though.
I would say most would mirror it. ICAP, for the most part, they do individual lines of coverage. They'll offer like property only from time to time, but most of their insurers are purchasing their property and casualty line coverages. So that's how most work, but again, there are others in that situation. If you go to pages 6 and 7, just a quick overview of our team and setup. I know we had a previous meeting that kind of walked through our value proposition and who we are, but left-hand side, so page 6, this would be the team that the county would primarily work with. So Janice Durham is our lead account manager with public entities. We define that as cities, counties, and school districts. So Janice oversees the account management of all of our clients. So if there's vehicle asset changes, claims filing, Janice is the primary point of contact there. The benefit to our public entity offering, what we feel proud of, is the fact that we offer public entities a level of local service and people that have a pulse on what's happening in the local community. So John and team out of our assistant and associate's office, like the capital city, so very knowledgeable as far as what's happening in the community and current events, while having a team behind the scenes in our group that works with counties, cities, school districts across the state of Iowa. So that's our value proposition. Left-hand side would be who you would work with. Right-hand side is additional team members that you could potentially work with. The one that I always highlight is Lauren Houston, right at the top, oversees our local love program. So that's just our charitable giving arm of First Main Street Insurance. Oftentimes, public entities are some of the biggest beneficiary of charitable opportunities. You guys have a pulse on what's needed in the community and potential giving opportunities. So Lauren would coordinate all those efforts, and we have budgeted a percentage of revenue to give back to our local communities. So any of these team members you could potentially work with, but left-hand side of that page would be kind of your primary points of contact if we were to work with Floyd County. Any questions on those pieces? Yeah. 8 and 9 and 10 are the pages that the most information exists. So that's these pages here. What we attempted to do is left-hand column is the current policies with EMC per our review. So we're trying to summarize just to give you a comparable of what's in existence today compared to what we are proposing in the right-hand. Just as a starting point, you'll see I tried to highlight some pieces of information that I'd say are differentiators, or things that we need to talk about, just so the county understands the difference between coverages that we're offering compared to what's currently enforced. Left-hand column again is based on your current term expiring policies. So we don't have the new proposal, what's being offered to compare to. So this is based on what's currently enforced and expiring on July. You'll see, just for the sake of looking at what's our total blanket limit of insurance, total blanket limit for property coverage with ICAP is 56 million, just in excess of that. So that's basically any of your buildings and business personal property. You would have a blanket limit of insurance that exceeds 56 million. So that would be the courthouse, various other buildings across the county, and your contents that sit within the buildings. That would be your limit of insurance. We base it off of the expiring term, so EMC has a very similar blanket limit of insurance. Not a ton of differentiation there, but just want to make sure you all are comfortable with having a significant limit of insurance in place for your property coverage. This quote is based on a $2,500 deductible. We would typically look to increase that, have a county of your size take on more risk. But we wanted to quote this piece apples to apples, so we can look at higher property deductible options with ICAP. We did an estimate. You'll see that information at the bottom, but this is based on a $2,500 all other perils deductible. One thing that's really important to look at with different offerings, whether it's EMC, ICAP, and then I know Travelers writes in this space, and I'm not sure if there's a proposal that's being made from Travelers. But the wind and hail deductible is a significant differentiator. I wouldn't say one's better than the other, but they all read very different. So it's important to understand those differences, just so you guys are aware of what your potential exposure is for wind and hail. So wind and hail deductibles are if there's a hailstorm, if there's a tornado, if there's a derecho, something that triggers that deductible to be enforced, you have a separate out-of-pocket expenditure when compared to your all other perils deductible of $2,500. So with EMC, you have a 1% wind and hail deductible on the current policy. It's based on 1% of the value of the assets that are impacted. So think your courthouse, for example, your out-of-pocket expenditure, if the courthouse in total is valued at $40 million, then 1% of that is 400,000. If a tornado impacts this particular building, 400,000 is your out-of-pocket expenditure before insurance kicks in. The way EMC reads is all wind and hail events trigger that deductible. So any wind and hail event, if that's the cause of loss, you have a 1% of the building value deductible as opposed to your 2,500. With ICAP, theirs is a 2% wind and hail deductible. So higher out of pocket, 2% of it building value that is impacted. Again, if you think of a $200,000 building, tornado hits that, 2% of the building value is 4,000. In that case, that's your out-of-pocket expenditure before insurance kicks in.
What is ISO that you have in there?
Yeah, so two big differentiators. The definition for ICAP is a ISO categorized storm triggers the wind and hail event taking place. So ISO is the Insurance Services Office. They categorize storms. So they typically only categorize storms that are $25 million in damage and greater for the storm in total. Meaning if you have a one-off hailstorm that doesn't have a huge impact and the total loss from that hailstorm is not 25 million and greater, they don't categorize that storm. So with EMC,
I
because
put
it's,
that other table, or the other table that had that breakdown, is that right?
yes, yeah.
Gotcha, now that makes sense.
Yeah, so basically, if it's a hailstorm that's minor in nature, EMC's is gonna say 1% of the building value. If it's not a named storm, ICAPS would say 2,500. Because it's not a named storm, it doesn't trigger the definition. So that's one differentiator. The big thing that, that to me is most important for counties, the way that we evaluate risk is we want to make sure that you don't have catastrophic claims that have a huge cash outflow that puts the county in a bad position. The wind and hail, ICAP has a maximum wind and hail deductible, which means if there's an event, let's say a tornado blows through Charles City and wind and hail deductible triggers, it's 2% of the value of the buildings, but there's a maximum wind hail deductible at 300,000. So if you think about the courthouse again, valued at $40 million, if there was not a maximum with ICAP, you take 2% times 40 million and be $800,000, just huge expenditures. That did not work for agents with ICAP. We pushed back on that quite a bit last year and said that's too much exposure for counties and cities to take on. So they do have a max based on your TIVs, your total insured values. So for the county, for wind and hail events, if you went with ICAP, your maximum out of pocket is 300,000. From our understanding with EMC and Travelers, they do not have a max out of pocket. So it's basically with EMC, it's 1% of the building values impacted without a max. With Travelers on the bids that we've seen and working with them, it's typically 2% with a minimum wind hail deductible with no maximum. So just for comparative purposes, want to make sure that we talk in length about that because that is oftentimes your greatest exposure to have out of pocket spend when you're utilizing insurance is wind and hail deductible. So they do very significantly. So I'm gonna pause on that. Any questions there? If not, for the purposes of being very high level, I won't go through all these columns. You can see again, it's broken down by line of coverage. Again, left-hand EMC, right-hand ICAP, IMWCA. The next very noteworthy line to talk about would be the workers' compensation. So you'll see last year, the work comp cost was $121,947 with EMC. The offer from IMWCA is $60,023. So oftentimes we get asked how can it vary so significantly? IMWCA is once again, they're a risk pool. So cities and counties are sharing in risk for workers' compensation events. Work comp would be somebody sustaining bodily injury during their course and scope of their job duties. So any medical expense or indemnity to get them back to work. That's what work comp covers. IMWCA can be very creative in their credit structure because of the fact that they are a risk and assurance pool. So just cost savings year over year. The experience mod went down a couple of points, but price competitiveness, IMWCA can be very competitive, which is what the offer is there.
I would assume that like IMWCA doesn't give a reimbursement check or a refund check on premium on work comp. Then we've got some healthy checks back from EMC on that, good thing. But I'm guessing over the $60,000 cost, we probably don't have that.
They audit the same way that EMC will. So they'll take a look and audit to see if there's any unearned premium that's generated. As far as dividends, I don't think that IMWCA has issued a dividend. It's said, but I'd have to look into that, but no, on that amount of spend, you're probably not looking at a significant dividend. Continuing to go down, I'm gonna point this out on if you go down to the commercial umbrella excess line, I'll talk about how that impacts all of these lines year over year. There's some significant variance. The way that your current structure is, from what we read, is on all of your casualty lines, you have $1 million occurrence limit for auto liability, general liability, for your public officials liability, and your law enforcement. So you have $1 million of underlying coverage, and then you have a $6 million umbrella that sits above and beyond that. So in theory, if you have say a significant law enforcement event, that's a multiple $1 million claim, you have your $1 million of underlying. If that exhausted, then your umbrella would kick in and pay above and beyond that. Those limits deplete based on claims happening. The county, we've reviewed your guys' claim history, has very, very clean claim history. So historically, at least for the 5 years that we've seen, looks very, very good. So that hasn't taken place. You haven't had an umbrella excess claim over the last 5 years. But we are seeing significant increases in nuclear verdicts and large claims, and then just more claims activity, an increase in lawsuits, particularly around law enforcement liability the last 5 years, and then public officials the last couple of years. We're just seeing more suits filed against municipalities. The way that ICAPS works is we quoted the full excess liability amount that you can get as a ICAP member. So their policy works where they have $2 million underlying limits for all those lines of coverage that I mentioned. And those don't vary. They give a $2 million limit. You can't get 1 million. You can't request it. It's 2 million of underlying. And then you select your excess liability limit that you want. We quoted the full 13 million because that's what we recommend to a county the size of Floyd County. In the event that you have a large claim, especially like a law enforcement liability claim or a significant auto liability claim, we would want to have you guys have the full limit. We can always scale that back, but that's how it's quoted. ICAP will go to 13 million of excess liability, which gives you $15 billion of limit available for any one claim. theirs is not a depleting, it's not an aggregate form, which means that if you have a significant auto liability event, and then in the same policy period, you have a significant law enforcement liability event, your limit of available insurance for those claims is then depleted throughout. You essentially have $15 million per line of coverage. So that's just a unique offering from ICAP that's not, you don't see that oftentimes with a traditional insurance company, but then being a risk pool, $15 million available for any one claim. So you'll see that reflected if you go line by line and look at your occurrence limit. It looks significantly different, and it's because we have that excess liability quoted with this. The only other thing to talk through is cyber. We did not see cyber in the EMC policy, but that's not to say it doesn't exist. It could be elsewhere. Okay, so, what we did was we put it in here just to compare, the pricing. We basically quoted a $250,000 limit with ICAP. And then the notes will, show that you can go up to $1 million with ICAP for this premium. The reality is you can go out and get additional cyber limit from outside carriers as well, but we just quoted options. And again, we figured that, that's probably placed elsewhere, so you're gonna see that, it was not found isn't covered as far as kind of questions. For that final piece here is you're gonna see, with ICAP's member definition, the E911 and emergency management would technically be separate ICAP members based on how their member definition reads. And so with ICAP, if you're to go with them, you would have 3 separate members. You have Floyd County E911, and Floyd County Emergency Management. With that, there's some added benefit as far as what you get for ICAP legal access, ICAP safety grants. But just wanted to say that as a differentiator in your setup, there'd be 3 separate members where today, all of that is listed under Floyd County's master policy and their additional insurance. So ICAP setup is not better as a result, it's just different based on how their definition reads. So I broke out those 2 invoices and just added it as a line item down here, just for the sake of comparative purposes. So then the end result is what's quoted is, our offer is at $423,131 for all coverage included. That's a $55,000 decrease year over year, about an 11.5% savings when compared to the prior term. And then you're gonna see some notes, below that on just options that you could look at. So we would typically recommend, again, a higher property deductible. If you went to 10,000, we would estimate the savings about 6,000. But wanted to, again, have this apples to apples for comparative purposes. Cyber limit, to increase to $1 million, would cost the county about $4,000. And just some notes on cyber and the wind and hail deductibles. So I apologize for, kind of the, getting in depth and into weeds, but just when comparing different offers, they have significant differences and changes. So want to be as transparent about, what those look like as we possibly can be. So happy to answer any questions if either of you haven't.
One thing that I understood with ICAP in the past, we talked about this, I think at the last meeting you were at, is if you want to get out of it, it's nearly impossible to get out of ICAP. Can you explain that?
Yeah, basically, the way that the member definition reads is if you have open casualty claims and you go to exit, ICAP's obligation for claims and settlements ceases upon you exiting. So the terminology is oftentimes it's impossible to leave. That's not necessarily the case, but I will say if you have large open casualty claims, it becomes very difficult to want to leave. Because if you have, let's say you have a significant law enforcement liability claim that's open today, and you say, hey, we want to go out, and leave ICAP now and get other options. If you leave, ICAP no longer has an obligation for the defense costs. And if you settle or if an award is made against you, they no longer have obligation to pay those. So if you have open casualty claims, it can be difficult down the road. In Floyd County's case, that's not the case today. We looked at another county that was with ICAP. They're a client of ours. We quoted them elsewhere. They didn't have open casualty claims. They had a premium that was less than from Travelers actually, and based on just insurance setup and what they had for access, they actively chose not to leave ICAP to go to a cheaper premium, even though they didn't have claims that weren't allowing them to do that. So I hear that brought up a lot, and I understand and hear it. What I'd say is it's not impossible to leave. You have to give 60 days notice, and I feel pretty confident in the fact that there's 75 counties with ICAP. I think that there's a reason. But that is a differentiator for sure. Does that answer your question? Yeah, you got it.
I don't have any further questions for it. I mean, it's all. I do. Yeah, but
I'm just gonna, one more question, just because of our hot topic is wind energy.
Mhm.
If we were to get sued, what's the policy difference?
Yeah, it depends on what the suit is alleging, just like anything else. When claims relatable there, it would likely fall under a wrongful act. So you guys as a board are making some type of what an energy company would claim is a wrongful act and going against one of your own ordinances, let's say, that's where the coverage would trigger. So then they would have to look at facts and allegations, but it would fall under your public officials liability line. Most likely, and then the response would be again, 2 million of underlying plus your 13 million of excess liability. So that would be our starting point for that type of.
thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Mark Melrose. I'm with Melrose Insurance Center. For the sake of time, I'm going to, you had an advanced look between EMC and Travelers. I'm gonna remove Travelers from this just because of the reasons that I stated in that report. If you guys have specific questions about Travelers, I'd be happy to answer those. But so I'm gonna move forward and focus on my recommendation being to stay with EMC Insurance. If that's okay. And again, if you have questions about the Travelers quote, I'd be happy to let's just go through that. So if you look at your 3-ring binder, and I also sent in a comparison as well. There's 2 options with EMC. The first one was if it renewed the way without any of this going on, it renewed as is. With the deductibles that they're changing to, and renewed the way it was. The second option, what I did is I took Travelers Insurance, and they had very high deductibles in many categories. So I tried to raise the deductibles on the EMC side to give a better comparison. And that's what I did for you guys in that cover letter, showing the differences, and there was also a deductible tab. Again, we talk about deductibles, that's really important. So option number 2, and I'm gonna make the same recommendation as well, is you guys should look at higher deductibles, no question. Not extremely high deductibles in certain categories, but there are certain deductibles you should look at. The one thing I do want to focus on that deductible tab is that property deductible that was brought up. If you look at option number 2, what I'm recommending is a 1% wind hail deductible. and 10,000 all other peril. The reason for that, is, the savings is significant. So think of it this way, you would have to have a lot of losses. You could save, right now, you can save about $109,000 between these two versions that I was showing you. You'd have to have a lot of losses to meet those deductibles. So you're gonna pocket that money and you'd have to have a tremendous amount of losses, not only property losses, but auto losses, you name it. And that's highly unlikely. Your history just doesn't show that type of loss history. Catastrophic cap was discussed. Something to consider about a catastrophic cap. You could have a huge catastrophic loss. However, Floyd County spread out. So if all your buildings were in one spot and a tornado hit and wiped them all out, you could incur many deductibles, which would be a catastrophic loss. But your buildings are all spread out. The chance of a tornado or a fire taking out the three most expensive buildings would be this building, fossil building, and case management. They're all spread out. So the chance of that catastrophic loss or having a cap, I feel, is not really important. So you'll also notice on that deductible page, again, recommending higher deductibles. Some of those places would be in the business auto at 2,000. I did send the previous board a comparison on this a few years ago when I was trying to get you guys to move up to higher deductibles on auto. It makes a lot of sense to move. It really does. Your history on auto losses is insignificant compared to the money that you guys will pocket instead of paying that out. So higher
Don't say
deductible,
that, you'll jinx it.
pardon?
Don't say that, you'll jinx it now.
I know, I shouldn't. I'm gonna flip through a little bit further here, just so we can, again, move time. Save a little bit of time. I do want to talk about, different coverage items that, between ICAP and EMC, some significant ones. Again, there's a list of, every company's got these additional coverages that you have. I sent you a copy of that for travelers and EMC. I'm sure ICAP sent you the same. A lot of coverages that you guys can compare back and forth. They're very similar, but there are specific coverages that I want to point out that are important. Number one, I'm not sure, but we do have a drone liability, or we do have drone liability, as you guys are aware of. As far as crime coverage with EMC versus ICAP, ICAP has $10,000 coverage for things like per employee. If an employee were to abscond with money, they limit it at 10,000. EMC limits that to 100,000 per employee if they should do something wrong and steal money. ICAP has 10,000 on all their categories, including forgery and alteration. EMC has 25,000 on forgery and alteration, and that inside money stolen or outside money stolen. Again, ICAP's at 10,000 and EMC's at 15,000 on those two categories. So it doesn't happen often, but if it does, you want to be covered. On the ICAP 911 coverage, they talked about that as a separate policy and explained it very well. They currently, I believe, has $2 million coverage on their policy. EMC has full coverage on that, up to $6 million for E911 issues. As a reminder, E911 insurance protects the county if something goes wrong. For example, if a caller can't get through on an emergency or help is sent to the wrong location, the county can be sued. It covers you for legal defense, settlements, judgments related to those types of claims. I'm not sure if ICAP can increase that. If they do, it would be an additional amount of money, but there is a significant difference between coverage between those two policies. As far as cyber, I believe ICAP is at 250,000. And EMC, or it's not EMC, it's CFC, a separate policy, is $1 million for cyber. The most frequent type of cyber you hear about cyber, is ransomware. You heard of ransomware? They hold you hostage. They hold your information hostage. And if you talk to the cyber guys, they say this is rampant. So 250,000 versus a million is a significant difference as well.
You know what our cyber insurance policy costs right now?
It's $8,500. Yep.
For $1 million.
Is for $1 million worth of coverage and multiple categories of coverage. I can't compare that between ICAP's coverage and theirs, but it's a very comprehensive policy. You pay more for it, but you're also getting a lot more coverage, so. As far as the umbrella coverage goes, EMC will quote as high as 10 million. They are at 6 million with a base of 1 million, so you've got $7 million worth of coverage, or 2 million on some lines, up to $8 million worth of umbrella coverage. The big question is, what's enough? There are some counties that are less than this. There are some counties that are more than this. So it's a hard one to define on how much coverage is needed, but EMC can go up to 10 million. I did want to discuss a couple of things too, as I wrap up, and I'll open it up to questions. It's important to understand that there are significant differences between standard insurance and a pool. And that was brought up briefly. A couple of key points that you have to remember. Number one, and I'll read from this, that EMC is protected by the Iowa Insurance Guarantee Association. That's called the Iowa Guarantee Fund. And what that means is, if EMC were ever go out of business and couldn't pay claims, the guarantee fund steps in and helps cover losses up to a certain limit. Worst case scenarios, EMC just goes away. You do have a guarantee fund that backs that up. You're not out in the wind on a pool out of pocket. There's also, EMC is also rated by a company called AM Best. It's an independent company that rates financial stability and the ability to pay claims. Again, there's a watchdog looking over standard companies. EMC is rated A, excellent. ICAP is not rated by AM Best because it's not a traditional insurance company. That means there's no independent financial watchdog evaluating how stable it is or how well it can handle big claims over time. So another significant difference is Iowa has the Iowa Insurance Division oversight. So the Iowa Insurance Division looks over companies like EMC. They're licensed insurance companies, which means it's regulated by this division. It's important because they make regular checks on EMC to make sure they have enough money to pay claims, follow fair business practices, treats policyholders properly, and files rates and policy forms for approval. ICAP, on the other hand, is a risk-sharing pool, not an insurance company. That means it's not regulated by this division in the same way. There's no regular state oversight of its finances or claims handling or operation. I want to bring up something. A lot of people, and I've dealt with pools before, and they'll say it's highly unlikely these things are ever going to happen. I do want to remind you on a couple of things. In the state of Iowa, we lost 5 large insurance companies after the derecho went through. Remember the derecho? Their exposure was so huge. Salina, Secura, Iowa Mutual, Hale, there's 5 large companies left the state of Iowa. They had to pay their claims though. That's a big difference. Standard insurance company, if they couldn't, they even had it backed up by Iowa Guarantee. So they left the state, but they still had to pay every single one of those claims. A pool does not. Second thing, pools. I insured the family YMCA years ago under a national YMCA pool. The rates were very low. It offered a dividend in the form of they vest them over a number of years. In other words, they get these credits. And if they ever decide to leave that pool, then they're given this money that has been put into a bucket, into a small bucket. What happened with the family YMCA is they were in for about 5 years. They had $35,000 built up in this pool of money that they could access if they ever left. the problem was the pool dissolved due to claims issues and financial problems. They wrote a letter, they non-renewed everybody, dissolved, and the family YMCA lost the 35,000. So it happens. It's not unusual, and that's where oversight is very important on these types of decisions. So Lori did ask a question about leaving. A huge one is that ability not to leave if you have claims on file, existing claims. If you do and you decide to leave, let's say rates go up on ICAP, premiums are going up, claims have gone up, and the pool has to respond, and you guys need to go someplace else. If you've got claims on file, you're gonna be responsible for those claims. So, kind of going on and on. Do you have any questions for me?
I will have, but you can go on.
Okay. Basically, my final recommendation is based on rate, coverage, stability, and also a history of I would say excellent property rates and level insurance rates over the years. I recommend staying with EMC Insurance.
My one question, and I should ask it of both of you, just to make sure that I believe what we have, I hope I'm correctly saying it, that with EMC, all the autonomous boards outside of, you guys have a separate policy for 911 and EMC. But we have all these appointments to various boards and commissions. EMC, I know covers, including township trustees.
Correct.
How does that work with the policy you're talking about?
Yeah.
Are township trustees and clerks covered, all the autonomous boards, conservation, public health, veteran affairs, all covered?
Yeah, so basically what we did is we looked at the additional named insurance schedule.
Can you speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry. What we did is we looked at the additional named insurance schedule that exists on the EMC policy and reviewed that to make sure that those different entities fall under the who is a member definition with ICAP. All of them do, so they're all covered under your master Floyd County policy. That's why there's the separate invoice and member for E911 and for emergency management.
Okay. And do you know how much, our drone is a different policy, do you know how much that is?
$617 for the drone liability.
That's coverage of how much?
That's $1 million, up to $1 million, yeah. They purchased one recently, but when they bought the equipment, they didn't need coverage for the equipment because they have built-in coverage through DJI.
But then what happens when that is?
When that goes
after
away,
that falls
I don't know if it was a year or 2 years, when that goes away, I've reminded Jason to call us and make sure we pick up coverage on that,
So what was it? Do you remember what it was on a previous drone?
It wasn't that, maybe double that price. Maybe 1,200 or 1,300 to add physical damage to the drone, but the drone was different too. This is a more expensive drone.
Yes, yeah, yes. Sure. Talk about, I had asked about the dividends for work comp. I don't think I see it in here, but you had provided a history of what we've received in, I think it was in your email on dividend checks. Maybe it was in your letter here too. Oh, yeah, your letter. No.
It is in there. It's in a couple of comparisons.
Yeah, so,
So, yeah, the dividends are, Travelers doesn't provide a dividend. EMC is one of the few companies that does. For instance, under work comp, if your losses are low, they reward you for that. And it depends on your loss ratio, at the end of the year. If you have a low loss ratio, if the percentage goes up and you get more money. long story short, this year you are on track, assuming everything looks good through the end of June. We're pretty close to that. For a $26,000 dividend for the previous year. Ever since this was started back in 2017, it's $400,000 in dividends that you've received. The average is about $25,000 a year. There were 2 years you did not have dividends, only 2 years, which is really incredible. At one point, I think Lori can attest to this, when I first came in, your work comp situation was really bad. I shouldn't say bad, you just had a lot of claims, a lot of slip and falls, all kinds of things. EMC helped come in and implement a safety plan, safety issues to discuss safety with all the department heads. It's boring, I get that. But you just have to create a culture of awareness where people think about what they're doing when they get out of a truck in icy weather, things like that. Actually, after that happened, a few years after that happened, claims went down significantly and they stayed there, which is really incredible. So EMC rewards you for that every year. It's not a guarantee, obviously. You could have that one anomaly where you have a really bad work comp claim and it wipes out the dividend. But you guys have only seen that 2 years since 2017. Oh, excuse me, 2007.
I just crunch the numbers. Yeah, anything.
You have any more questions for Laura?
I don't.
I don't.
But I just crunched some numbers. And tell me, both, either you tell me if I'm off on any of this. So if I'm taking your recommendation, and I don't know, Boyd, where you're at, if we want to make a decision today or not, but we've never been so close to a new year of, not having a policy in place right now. So it makes me a little nervous, and just in looking at numbers here, I'll tell you what my thoughts are. Okay, so EMC, you're faced with your higher deductibles, so the 381,702. If I add on about 8,500 for the drone that we pay on a separate policy, and the 6,001,
617.
617.
It's actually added in, that 381 includes those two.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the 381,702 includes the roughly $9,117.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, 381,702 is the total. Yeah.
And then what's that average that we get in that dividend check, would you say? Is it
26,000.
26,000? Okay, I just threw 20,000. And I know it's kind of split hairs with which policy coverage is the better coverage. With the catastrophic type things, or, you know, whatever you might have, but just in looking at that, if I take EMC's 381,000 and reduce 26,000, our net is $355,702. Compared to if I take ICAP with IMWCA, 423,313, I think that was a number, is that right?
423,131.
Yeah, and then, you said if we were to change those deductibles, it'd be about $6,000 less.
6,000 less on the property if we went to a $10,000 deductible, and then if we reduced our excess liability to match, you're probably looking at 2,000 per million. So we'd be going down from 13 to 6, so probably 14,000 for reducing excess liability if you're comparing.
So total, 10, that with everything, 14,000
Correct. Plus 6,000 for the property.
plus the 6,000. Yeah, okay, so we're. So 355,702 to about 403,312. So I think our difference there is. We think, which policy do we think has the better coverage? I both have some valid points, but what's your thoughts?
This is anybody's else. Insurance is confusing as all. And, it comes down to a lot to the bottom line and the service. I mean, insurance is only as good as when you need it. And, and my thoughts on this is that, and you said this, we haven't gone this far without coverage or figured out coverage. I mean, I think we had to make a decision today.
I would like to.
Yeah, I would too. And, so I guess, way to just throw this out is we have to make a motion and,
I think we're gonna,
right?
yeah, and so just with those numbers, I think I gotta go with EMC, continue with EMC.
And I would second that.
Yeah.
So,
But appreciate all the
Yes.
work. We haven't done this process for many years. EMC sharpened their pencil, obviously, which part of me is kind of like, I really didn't sharpen their pencil years prior. So
We did.
maybe we need to do more, going out to bids more often to make sure those pencils are sharpened.
yeah, I appreciate everybody's work on this. You say we don't do this every year?
We don't do it every year. We actually haven't done it for several years. I don't even know how long we've been doing it. Yeah,
Well, maybe we need a little sooner.
maybe every 3 years.
Or something, so.
I know it's a lot of work for
Yeah.
getting those quotes, a lot of time, and I know all of you have spent a lot of time.
So anyway, we have.
I have a motion, yeah.
Second, and all those in favor of that motion?
Mr.
We
Chairman,
want some public comment there.
public comment.
Sure.
John Zimmerman, past board supervisor at Butler County. We were protected by ICAP and we got some pretty healthy dividends on general liability, 12 to 20,000 a year, nothing to do with work comp. So I have that question to the ICAP rep. It hasn't even been discussed because I don't think EMC gives dividends on being an owner. They do on work comp. Several questions here. What's the elected official coverage? Iowa code states 20,000 in everybody except the treasurer needs to be 50,000. Is there currently coverage with EMC?
It's up to policy limits up to 6 million. It'll go into umbrella coverage as well.
And
You talk about liability coverage,
bond
bond coverage.
coverage.
They are bonded under the crime policy, which is $1 million. They are bonded. Yeah, it's part of it.
So dealing with Dennis Kiefer with DD3, which has been a pain in everybody's side. And he did the research and got 0 answers about drainage trustee coverage, a lot of confusion. So I'll leave that one alone.
Well, that's a good question though. Supervisors take their hats off as board supervisor and put on a trustee for the drainage district. Covered?
Correct.
Covered? Okay.
If farmers take over the district, they have to provide $1,000 bond. It only costs $100. In Iowa drainage code, there's no liability. You're protected for neglect as a trustee, but you can be sued in the court of law. Another thing with ICAP insurance, say if Adam buys $2 million worth of equipment between now and your anniversary date, there's no increase in premium until your anniversary date. That's past history at Butler County. You don't automatically get a increase in your premium just because you bought a bunch of equipment. Is that true or false yet?
True for that and audits, yes, that's correct.
I would think that would be expected.
Yeah, with traditional insurance company, it's prorated based on how far into the term you are, but with ICAP, it's the contribution is waived and then they pick up the expense of the next policy
Oh,
anniversary.
gotcha.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Quick point on the dividends. ICAP has historically offered member vouchers, so it's essentially a form of dividend. It offsets the next contribution that you would pay. ICAP is for the package lines. The reason that I didn't discuss it today is for the last 3 years, they have not had a voucher to members, so they haven't offered that just because of program performance. They do it based on the entire group, so they have not offered the last several years. Historically, before that, they had significant member vouchers, which gentleman in the back is alluding to. Those, I believe, could exist very soon again, but it's based on the overall program as opposed to individual performance. So it's a different thing program.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Or
Can you be more specific in your motion as to which EMC plan?
But I'm sorry, my motion would go to with EMCs for their quote of, the 381,700 to option 2. Excuse me, it's 372,585. You've added in the extra for the drone and the cyber, but that's a separate policy that we're not looking at today.
Correct, 372,585.
372,585. Option 2 with the higher deductible. Thank you. We need to vote on it, yeah. Unless you're thinking,
yeah. We done with the big comments. If not, go ahead with vote.
I,
Pass.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to, number 9, engineer update. Thank you.
Come up front so you can hear me better.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
In essence of time, I'll be kind of brief with my update today. Major things that happening with secondary road department. Our contract rock or resurfacing our gravel roads started Monday this week. So you probably, if you're out and about, can't you see trucks and dumping rock on our roads. We've got a bridge replacement project on 165th Street. That's south of North Springs. That is in progress. We started here a week and a half ago or so. We're replacing a bridge with a railroad tank car or railroad tank car culverts. We're rained out there at the moment, last I heard, but hope to get back into it here the next day or so.
You know, we've talked about going out there together. I'd love to do that. So when they're able to get back out there, let me know and I'll see if I can coordinate it.
Okay, absolutely. Might be, we'll see what this week, I'm actually gone the rest of this week. We'll talk this week. So
Okay, or I can go out there too.
absolutely. Our new excavator that we just got is in service. We have been using it. The operator's just learning how to run it. Each machine's different, obviously. Another thing that's not on my punch list that Gloria reminded me of this morning, we had, I authorized a tire purchase of over $15,000 for secondary road department. Just bulk purchase of tires. I didn't think that would be an issue with either of the two, but it's kind of standard by the mill. I think they got a dozen or so tires. In fact, we've already used one of them, so we like to keep them on hand so that if tires do fail or something happens, we have them.
So that was, I don't know if you got a call or not, but it was because it's over the 15,000 that you called in.
Yep.
But it hasn't been a claim that.
I haven't seen the thing yet, so I'm assuming it'll come next week.
Okay.
So it was just.
So I just said maybe we know it, since it's over the 15,000, at least
I know, we
you've
said,
got this consensus here rather than a motion that we've asked for.
appreciate that.
Yep. Office activities. Maintenance projects, Denko slurry leveling on T64. They're possibly gonna start later this week. With the rain, we might push it back to next week. But we should start seeing some work on T64, south and north of town here within a week or so. Crack filling, also Denko on T24 and also on Quail and 210th Street, which is southwest Charles City or west Charles City over just off of 14. That should be starting next week as well. There are some concrete pavements that are gonna be crack filling. That was approved here a couple weeks ago. We also completed our cutting of rumble strips on 6 locations. Engine ordnance signs. We ordered 6, we did get them in. 1 has been installed on B57 east of Underwood. I received a phone call at my office from a citizen over by Floyd requesting a sign on T44 coming into Floyd from the south. Which is 1 location, and then one of my foremen suggested on T64 coming from the north and in Charles City would be another possible location.
My question that is, it's our ordinance is a county ordinance, so if there was a violation in that city limits, it's probably not covered by, unless the city has its own ordinance. Would that be correct?
We put it in the county portion of the
Yeah.
road. So in the city limits, probably not.
Yeah.
But
But it doesn't hurt to put it there, I mean, it's that.
if you guys would like me to put them there, I will have them installed. These are suggestions that were given to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, if somebody sees a need, I mean, why not? You know,
Okay.
they're not that expensive for.
I would
The
even,
county portion,
I would even propose another one on Gilbert Street, coming into Charles City.
Gilbert Street comes to Charles City. Okay.
There's a lot of, at least, somewhere, maybe even, maybe Heights. I'm sure they get a lot of rumbling.
We can install it in the county portion of that road.
Okay.
Okay, we will get those 3 locations installed in the next week or so.
I still have a couple left then.
Yes, there'll be 2 more signs
Anybody
available.
have any thoughts? Anything?
it's good,
Like I said, we're just keeping an inventory. If
yeah.
lots come up, we can always put them up.
Yep, thank you.
CHBP grant. This particular grant is basically it's a bridge bundling grant. There's been several rounds of it in the past. Another request for funding, notice of funding opportunity came out. I applied, submitted 3 of our structures to be included in this grant. And 2 structures have made the semifinalists.
That's awesome.
Basically, it means we're in as long as there's no environmental red flags that show up. I don't anticipate that with these 2 structures.
In which 2 structures made the?
These 2 structures are on the Rockford Blacktop, between 14 and Rockford.
Okay.
It's an old state road, they're 2 old state slabs.
Okay.
So it's very, very simple.
Both of them are on that.
Both of them, yes. I think the proximity of each other makes them a good bundling candidate, which might be why you were chosen.
Sure. Good job.
But yes, if these structures are approved, the grant would fund approximately 80% of the cost of construction.
How much is it?
80%?
80%?
Yep. It's approximately, we estimate about $1 million a bridge for constructing these. So what we would receive from the federal grant would be 1.6 million approximately.
And then were those in our bridge plan?
One of them was. We will have to do a 5-year plan amendment to get those bridges where they need to be once we determine when they want us to let it. That's one of they're moving quite rapidly on this grant program. The application, the whole state is putting in an application. There's 30 some structures.
Okay.
So in the application by the state is due August 15th.
Okay.
So our part is getting all the information, making sure our bridges are basically ready to go.
So this fall, they would have an answer likely? And then construction next year?
My understanding is Iowa is one of 4 states that have guaranteed like about $33 million grant money, just because of the criteria of this grant. So from my understanding is this granted for the state of Iowa, it's called the hearing. So, but yes, I hope to find out this fall yet.
Yeah.
I will probably be coming to the board with some amendments to my 5-year plan to get these structures in the proper year, make sure everything's.
In addition to the 5-year plan that we've done, I mean, we gotta reconstitute that and.
Yeah, I had
Just
trouble
look
something
around.
around there.
Yep,
Okay.
and I would, yeah, I said, one of these bridges is in the 5-year plan, it's back in the last year 5. The other one is not, so we have to add the one and you have to
Bump the one up.
bump the one up.
And
And yeah, and then next, when I do my next 5-year plan, I can find another structure potentially to replace that one in the 5-year plan.
Sure.
With their engineering funding.
Yeah.
So, no, this is.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yes, keep our fingers crossed, everything's looking very promising. We had a request for information on these 2 structures just this week, we just turned that in here this morning. So we're getting things moving along as quickly as we can. Quickly as we're requesting for information. Lastly, office schedules, I have a scheduled vacation tomorrow through Friday. And then I'm also scheduled for vacation the week of June 30th. Week before the 4th.
June 30th.
But I do plan on coming back next week with another update, maybe a little bit more sense one. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. That takes us to number 10, review / action regarding resolution number 26-25. Bridge road posting located on local secondary road system.
Yes, this is a bridge, I believe it's on March Avenue. We had our consultant Calvin Burns do bridge inspections as they do every 2 years on the type of bridges. They came back with a recommended posting of 15, 25, and 25 ton. It's a combination posting. It is slightly less than what was posted and what's existing. So in order to change posting, we need to pass that by resolution by board of supervisors.
So it'll be a 1-lane bridge then? Is that right?
Yes, it'd also be a 1-lane bridge. It's on a gravel road. Typically, that's not an issue. You don't typically see 2 semis meeting on a bridge on a gravel road. Or 2 or any cars for that matter.
Where's that on March?
I think it's over DD3.
In DD3?
Yeah, I think it's over DD3. If I remember right. It's a short span bridge north of 14.
That's not one that's needs some culvert work done. So,
No, that's upstream of that. It's around the corner, I believe.
okay.
And we're taking and lowering the weight, right?
Yes, you're passing a resolution to rate the bridge at this tonnage, this weight limit.
And that weight limit is what again?
15, 25, and 25 ton. It's a combination. 15 ton for, I think it's a straight truck, 25 ton for tractor trailer, and then 25 ton for combination multi-trailer type of vehicle.
Okay. I'll make the motion, regarding resolution 26-25, bridge loading posting on a local secondary road, changing the load limit to 25.
Yeah, combination.
You got that?
Yeah.
Comment? Welcome.
Yeah, I'd like to make on that bridge, be more specific on the location of that on March Avenue and where.
Would it be by,
If I had a map, I'd be able to tell you where it's at.
Johnson's, Irwin Johnson?
North of Irwin's,
That's what I wondered, if it was north of that.
right by that curve.
Yeah, it's right by that curve where the road heads towards, I don't have.
180th?
It's on March Avenue,
Intersection of 180th and March.
Sounds
It's gotta
right.
be that one, because I know the one otherwise on March is clear up.
Did I understand it to be a one-lane bridge?
Yeah.
Also
And,
for one lane.
and how high will the rails be on that? I'm just wondering about farm equipment. I mean, you put a one-lane
We're
bridge.
not changing the bridge.
Oh,
We're just
Just
posting
wait.
it for one lane traffic.
okay, okay.
We're
I
not
get it.
changing anything. The only thing we're doing is we're taking signs off, putting new signs up.
That's all. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep, yep.
I second your motion.
Okay. We need a roll call on that.
Cora, I. Campbell,
Aye. Passed. Okay, review number 11, review action regarding the First Amendment to the coordination contract number PCAT 2-25-101 and Fourth Amendment to the Community Partnerships Protecting Children contract number DCAT 2-23-109. What? And I need clarification.
this I believe bumps up, the DCAT dollars for fiscal year 26.
Yep.
Is that right? Tell me, I understand this one.
Yes.
That's why you see fiscal year 27 is still 84,000. Depending what happens with DCAT, it'll, maybe need to be amended in that year, or for that year down the road. But at this point, that's the only change to the contract is 84,000, 87,000 from next year, fiscal year 26.
Okay,
DCAT is one of those that we're the fiscal agent for,
that will,
we're the fiscal agent for.
oh, yeah. Okay,
And we get, 5% or 3%? 10%, we get 10% on DCAT. So of that, if they spend all of that 87,000, we get $8,700. And
is that,
I make a motion to approve the contract,
I'll second that.
amendment number. First amendment to the coordination contract.
Would you have to be both in the same one or do you want to? Would you have to be both in the same one or
So you
separate?
want to vote the same one? Sure.
They're in the, you don't have to, if you don't want to, they're just listed as.
Oh, so yeah, let's go separate because the other one is CPPC.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the DCAT and then
First,
first amendment to DCAT.
second that. That doesn't take a roll call.
No,
No. All those in favor?
I,
Aye. Passed. And then to the Fourth Amendment, the Community Partnership Protecting Children Contract Number DCAT 2-23-109.
and that is, community partnerships for protecting children. Jill McKean, who's our employer record there, she also oversees that one, and that is, they are taking the 4-county, Bremer, Butler, Franklin and Grundy County. And so that's why that is, it's 10,000 per county, per cluster. And she has the P4C area and the FMC area, starting July 1, she get the T for F. So that's why it went from 20,000 to 30,000. And again, depending on what happened with state, that's why fiscal year 27 is still at 20,000. There's unknown what the state is gonna do with those programs.
Right, right. So that,
I make a motion to approve the Fourth Amendment to the Community Partnership of Protecting Children.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Number 12, review action regarding a $1,248.61 invoice from Motorola for communication tower to be paid for with tower project bonds. I thought we did something like that.
I don't know what this one is. Did Tyler or anybody know anything?
I don't have any further explanation besides the invoice that you all received.
Okay,
And it is an allowable expense through the project fund. I just don't know. That's one of the, Dennis was on that team. And maybe he would know what it is, but
yeah. It seems to me that we had some action on that, but maybe it was something different. Can you tell me, Martin? I guess I'd like to know what it's for. We can.
wonder if Travis is available for chance.
Travis Martin, how do you want to contact him?
And if we can't get hold of him, we.
June 27.
We're able to go the next time so we get some clarification.
Hey Gloria, this is Jen.
Yeah,
What is, it's about the tower.
yeah, it's a bill and it's got in there that it's advanced exchange not returned from SO number, that number there. Billing cost of replacement according to terms, conditions provided to Lynn Baumgartner, field service, for field service parts charges, field service part charges, $1,248.61. Are you still participating in those phone calls, Jen?
Somewhat, the last one call I was at ITAG, so I wasn't on that. I don't remember what was exchanged. I know that there was some talk about something being returned, or something not working, or I don't remember. I apologize, guys.
I think I have Travis.
Is it whose handwriting is it? Is it my handwriting or is it?
It's an invoice from Motorola. I got Travis's number. I'll give him a call.
Okay, sorry, I thought I could be some help, but I'm not.
Unless Jason is here. Jason.
All right, thanks.
I don't know if John would know either.
John, over on board. Hey Travis, this is Gloria. Hey, we're in the middle of our board meeting and we've got this invoice for $1,200 and some from Motorola, but we're not sure what it was for. Did you know? $1,248.61. It says advanced exchange not returned from SO number, that number there, 22825. Billing cost of replacement according to terms and conditions provided to Lynn Baumgart. Field service parts. Okay. Okay. Okay, so if we could get something by our meeting next week, the 24th, that would be great. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. He is not sure as well. He will get a hold of Lynn today and see what it's about, and we can put it on the agenda for the 24th. And maybe do a handwritten claim.
Okay.
Or if he finds something out earlier, maybe he'll make it.
All right, sounds reasonable, well. Or have you take care of that for us, right?
He just needs that information, Morgan.
Yeah.
Rather than be sending him this
We'll
whole.
table it till next week.
Do
Okay,
you have a motion to? Hold up on the 24th?
I'll make a motion that we hold up on this claim till the
24th.
24th.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay, 13, review and action regarding application for use of Floyd County Courthouse grounds for Main Street, Charles City 4th of July fireworks show.
I received an application,
it's on page 9 of your packet. It's on page 9 of your packet, if you look at it.
I received an application from J&M Displays, for use of the parking lot between the courthouse and the river, for the fireworks display over the 4th of July. They provided their insurance, everything checks out. It sounds like this is the group that has done it year after year, so it's kind of a routine thing.
It's just they store stuff there, they block off the parking lot with cones on the day of the event. And I see she didn't mark the boxes for like food to be served and that kind of thing, but none of that, it's not a public thing, it's just for staff that light the fireworks.
Okay.
It's not a public thing. The event is public, but that's not our event. The fireworks is the chambers.
In the interest of public safety,
Yeah,
we asked that, not have anyone there,
yes,
prefer 300 foot of clear distance
yes.
from the explosives.
Okay.
It's, yeah. Yeah. I make a motion that we approve the application for use of courthouse grounds for the July 4th fireworks display to a rain date of the 5th, it looks like.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pass. Number 14, note the approval of a liquor license renewal for Rustic Acres LLC.
I don't see that in the packet, but it was just a renewal
Yeah.
that you approved, I believe, you, it came up. The applicant came through after the expiration date, and it was like the date, like June 3rd. Or something like that, before, because I think Morgan contacted you before you flew out.
Oh,
Yeah, you were doing it. And so there's been situations where the chair would approve because of that timing issue.
So
And
we
so that's
need
what
to-
Morgan had called you.
back.
And because it expired and they had an event this last weekend.
Oh.
So, and we do leave on and Dennis not here, we thought that was the best option to have you approve it. Everything was in order with the application. I approved it online,
Okay,
based on you approving it with Morgan. Yeah. So, okay.
so we noted the approval, we don't need to take any action on it.
Normally you would
We
ahead
would,
of that,
we don't.
but since you approved
Since I
it,
approved, yeah, okay,
yeah, we just noted then, so we have the record of it.
okay. Duly noted. 15, discussion regarding supervisor vacancy process per Iowa Code 69.2, appointment of chair, vice chair, and appointments to various boards and commissions. Have a 69.2, I read that code.
I did follow the codes and, 69.2 just says in the event of a death. And. Rather on code section. In the event of the death, the position is vacated. And so I talked with Todd and we think it should be noted that the Board of Supervisors acknowledged that there is a vacancy. But Morgan can probably update on what the auditor treasurer reporter process is to fill that vacancy. It's not that the Board of Supervisors don't get to fill it. It's basically kind of like what we had when Jeff Hawbaker at the November 2022 election after the canvas resigned from the position, and that's how former Supervisor Jorgensen got appointed through that process.
Okay,
So in the meeting this morning with the auditor, treasurer and recorder, it was decided to move forward with an appointment. That notice will go out here sometime yet today and land likely in the paper, in the Charles City paper on Friday and the Norris Springs paper next Wednesday. With that, the deadlines will be set that, let's see. That, we will be accepting applications, which would include a resume, and cover letter and answers to the list of questions that we have posted, later today or tomorrow, to the auditor's office by 4 o'clock on July 3rd. With those applications, the committee will reconvene on July 2nd at 8:30. Anybody interested who has submitted that application and questionnaire would be able to present up to 5 minutes during that meeting. Then, if it's possible, the group will choose an appointment that day. If it is not possible, we will reconvene on the 8th. But regardless, due to Iowa code, there will be an appointment by July 20th. The eligible electors residing in Floyd County District 2 have the right to file a petition requesting that the vacancy be filled by special election. To be valid, that petition must contain a minimum of 234 signatures from eligible electors in District 2. That petition must be filed within 14 days of the publication of notice or within 14 days of the actual appointment, whichever is later. One thing to note is that, just a reminder that this all has to do with that district, so the petition must be, if they choose the petition, that has to be eligible electors within that district. The person that is appointed must have lived in that district for a minimum of 60 days before the appointment. So there are some requirements that way that need to be followed per Iowa Code 6914A. If anyone has any questions, they are welcome to reach out to us. But yeah, we will get all of that posted later today or tomorrow. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Good job of putting it together and good luck with the process.
thank you. Okay.
There's other parts to that then too.
Pardon?
There's other parts to that agenda item then also.
Appointments to the, well, appointment of chair and vice chair. After this election.
No, you would do that now, or well, it's just discussion today, so we would probably wait till the 24th to do a motion to appoint the chair as vice chair. You're filling that, in the absence, you're filling that role, but Todd said we should make that a formal thing. And who the chair and vice chair are. So we could do that, since it's not an agenda item for action today. Maybe not, and that should be a future item, I would say.
But we'll need to reaffirm that. Is that what you're saying? Or we're gonna,
It'd be a new motion,
we need,
because you're not the chair currently, you're just acting. We intended to have any action if needed on the agenda, but I think that just got overlooked. But, so you know, I have, if you wanna be the chair, I have no worries. I'd be happy to be the chair if you don't wanna be the chair. So that's what this discussion is about. So I'm easy either way, whatever you want.
And we decide on this today.
You didn't have it as an action item, so it's just discussion.
It's just discussion.
So it's next week,
So we
Tuesday.
put this on the agenda for next week.
Yes, yes.
I go with that.
Okay, yeah. And then if, we could, go through the list and get that emailed out, on Dennis's appointments.
Oh, yeah.
So we can continue with those activities and appoint those as well, for the next meeting also. So if you want to think about
And
those positions.
the list of that again, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can email it out.
Updated one,
I can email.
so we can look that over. And that also will look at the 24th of the week now and look at, appreciate that. Any more discussion on that? Regarding that?
Oh, let's see, I think I had something. Oh, just, housekeeping kind of things, Morgan. I don't know if you've been, or if either of you've been in contact with Bernie to make sure emails are forwarded to you, probably, since you're the vice chair. That Dennis's emails get forwarded to you.
I thought he was going to forward them to,
Pardon?
I thought he was going to forward them to the board supervisor list, so that.
Oh, that would work as well.
I didn't
Till we
follow
get
up to know for
things.
sure what we decided to do, but, I do know that Dennis' email has been shut off for access and things like that, and now those things were taken care of.
Okay.
Um,
And then
and
getting,
then response back is supposed to be there, so that letting people know that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
that's perfect, yep.
And who to contact.
And then, returning his laptop.
Yes, we have been in contact with him.
Okay.
Any other good ones that I might not have thought of?
What's that?
Is there any other good ones I might not have thought of?
No, I can't think of anything else.
This is,
We don't have to do these things very often.
no, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then, number 16, future agenda items.
I would like to see hope that the work group would try to coordinate a date with Morgan to present the recommendation. It is a recommendation, but I think we want to keep moving on this. And, but we hold off on setting a date and time for continuation of the third reading. But, because there's video that they can watch for the presentation. This originally was going to be done the end of December, and here we are 6 months beyond that. And it's so hard to get that work group together, so if we could, I don't know how you feel about that, but that could be a future agenda item here as soon as they.
And the reason I postponed meeting with them today after looking at the agenda that we had, but secondary, but just with the fact that, we're acting now with 2 supervisors instead of 3, and my thought was that I just think with the decisions that have to be made, that will probably last for a generation or two, when you stop and then look at the easements that have to be granted and we're looking at a big decisions here for
It is.
decades to affect this county. And my feeling a lot is that I don't want to dictate and ram this down everybody's throat or whatever, that I'd like to see a supervisor sitting another one with us from District Two, so they have representation on this. And that's my feeling, that it's such a big monumental thing that, I just thought it was appropriate to delay this, and especially with the fact that what we're going through, these people, it would have been another $4,000 to everybody to come in again, you know, I mean, there's a cost for
Well,
what we've done and ongoing, but yeah.
I think it's good information for any candidate that's interested in applying with the auditor.
Well, and that's
Or
another,
to have that information.
well, that's another thing. I think it's gonna take something to bring another supervisor up to speed. You know, we've been going on this for a long time, like you said, and so I think we want to take this just a little slower and just make sure that we get all the facts out there and we get them educated. You know, I really want to see another supervisor to go forward.
For the recommendation,
Well, I need to think a little bit on that, you know, but I just think that, I'd be more comfortable having another supervisor here to discuss this, you know, what we come up with and everything, you know, I mean.
yeah, and I talked with, Judge Lambrado contacted me, and as well as Todd Pritchard and I had talked and thought it was a good process that's why it was on the agenda to keep moving with it. But we're getting too deep into discussion as it is, so, you know, I guess whatever happens next week, whoever the chair is, just maybe. Or if you're ready or not ready, that's that's what we do, whatever the chair puts out there, I guess.
Yeah, well, I just think it's, we need more discussion and, because again, I just think we need more representation on this to go forward. But I think let's table this and we can discuss it again next week, you know, okay? And, because we got the moratorium in June too, we have to think about, you know, what we're gonna do, but, I just think we need to get our legs underneath us here. I mean, we've lost Dennis. There's a lot more that has to be done in the commissions and everything else. I just want to make sure that, we have good representation and feedback and getting the new supervisor up and running, you know, and I can talk to Todd and the group. I would just, I'd like to table this till next week and see it, and then go ahead with, figuring out the chair, vice chair, all that, you know, and, I mean, there's only me and you, you know. This, so that's my feeling.
Chair, yeah, if you're done with that conversation, I just have a consideration for the trustees of DD three to follow up on weed spraying. If it hasn't been done already, I don't know if it has or not.
I think we,
It's not been done yet. It is on the schedule and is anticipated to be done later this week or next week.
Could you talk a little louder?
Sorry, I keep trying. I feel like I'm yelling if I go much louder. I was in contact with the sprayer over the weekend. Due to the weather, they have not been out there yet. They anticipate being out there later this week or early next week. But they will be coming to spray both DD one and DD three.
I did drive through all of that yesterday, and there's some grass coming, but there's some washouts. We can get that grass held, hold that in.
answer that.
That's the answer, yeah, we'll expect something soon.
Yeah, we got that company, you know, to do it and everything, so just wait for the weather, right? Okay. Thank you.
That's been done over here.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine. About a month ago, I asked for it to be on an agenda and nothing has been done about the pipeline. I think the citizens would like an update on the pipeline, on what's happening, because we're still paying claims. So if we could get an update on where we're at with that, I'd appreciate it.
I know Todd has talked to.
I know he has.
And
Yeah,
maybe Todd can present something that with notes.
just so we know where you're at.
I don't think it's gonna stop the bills yet at this point. They're still running.
Again, I know. Understood.
Any other future items that we?
Wage certifications, we haven't done that yet.
It's on the agenda and I have almost all of them collected.
Well, with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Drainage did some.
What is it for you?
The road all the way to,
You guys decide.
it was revamped. Seating tank.
Oh, I. So we go.
Yeah.
If you wanted to grow, they would.
No, I know it. I know it. Are you Linda?
Not too bad.
Good to see you. Hello.
Did you know?
No. Yeah. About as far as.
Here one.
That was 2 days out of state track meet, that's one drive. Look out the country. You take care, buddy.
I tried to call you back. Our phone goes, it just says that this person doesn't have their voicemail set up.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I've got a thing on my phone, I should have,